Abolishing the police has proven itself to be detrimental to society by the consequences of the Defund the Police movement, which was adopted by several cities after George Floyd was killed by police officer Derek Chauvin in Minneapolis, Minnesota on May 25, 2020. A bystander recorded Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin kneeling on the neck of George Floyd despite his protests that he couldn't breathe for 9 minutes until George Floyd was murdered. This horror inspired the Black Lives Matter protests and riots across America and led some cities to reduce funding of their police departments, cities including Minneapolis, Seattle, Portland, Los Angeles, Baltimore, and Chicago. Seattle cut the funding for their police, but after 400 fewer police officers, 2.5 years later, Seattle increased their funding for police and hired more officers. Cities that defunded their police departments during the Black Lives Matter protests discovered firsthand that abolishing the police and choosing community-based alternatives does not maintain order and safety. Crime increased, and cities who defunded the police have now increased police funding. In 2020, during the In 2020, during the Black Lives Matter protests, community-based alternatives to traditional police departments seem like a good alternative to many people. Racism and inequality seem to be perpetuated by police departments in general, with publicity of George Floyd's murder and other instances of bad policing. Now that we have seen the consequences and cities have reversed their defund the police policies, we know that abolishing the police isn't the answer to address systematic racism and inequality, because it results in increased crime and failed businesses. The result of the defund the police movement was low morale in law enforcement, resignations, retirements, a rise in violent crime, and businesses closing in the area with riots and crime. The justice system has many examples of when it didn't work, and sometimes convictions are too slow or don't result in the proper penalties according to the public opinion. Police officer Derek Chauvin, who killed George Floyd, was convicted of second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter, and was sentenced to 22.5 years in prison. The U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear his appeal. Without the protests, police officer Derek Chauvin might not have been convicted. Community-based protests and community involvement helps justice to be served, but community-based initiatives can't replace police departments. The impact of the defund the police movement on the cities that embraced it demonstrates that although community-based programs can be beneficial, they aren't a substitute for a good quality police department.